ratifié la Convention de Genève.
Riforma giudiziaria.
Sveiki, čia Europos naujienos. Tik pas mus aktualiausi ES įvykiai, glaustai ir originalo kalba. Tad kai kurie reportažai su lietuviškais titrais, visa tai jūsų patogumui. Na, o šioje laidoje tragedija Briuselyje. Taip pat mokesčių skaidrumas, sveikesnis požiūris į bankus ir pasiaiškinsime, kas tai yra privatumo skydas. Visa tai ir žinoma dar daugiau visai netrukus, taigi pradėkime. Tai, kas kovo 22-ąją nutiko Briuselyje, turėtų pagaliau kažką pakeisti ES gyvenime. Matyt, akivaizdžiai nebepakanka ES šalių lyderių pasirašyto bendro Europos vadovų tarybos pareiškimo dėl teroristinių išpuolių, kuriame buvo pabrėžta, jog kruvinos atakos Briuselyje buvo nukreiptos prieš atvirą ir demokratinę visuomenę. Pasak Lietuvos vadovės Dalios Grybauskaitės, mes Europoje turime daug naivumo ir vertiname terorizmo grėsmes ir jų veiklą Europoje truputį galbūt paviršutiniškai ir nepakankamai rimtai. Reikia labai atvirai sakyti ir savo įsivardyti, kad vyksta žiaurus ir nepateisinamas karas prieš visus Europos žmonės. Ir todėl reakcija turi būti atitinkama. Privalome griežtai atsakyti visomis įmanomomis priemonėmis. Visomis turiu galvoje lygiai taip pat į karą karu prieš terorizmą. Taip pat skelbti karą teroristams. Priemonės turi būti adekvačios, teroristai yra nusikaltėliai, kurie kariauja prieš žmogiškumą, prieš žmonės. Tai reiškia, kad mūsų reakcija turi būti adekvati, pabrėžė Lietuvos prezidentė. Pasak Dalios Grybauskaitės, teroristai kėsinasi į didžiausią vertybę – žmogaus gyvybę. Toliau laidoje apie susitikimą su rytų partneriais, kuris prasidėjo tylos minute pagerbiant tragedijos Briuselyje aukas. Europos parlamento nariai ir jų kolegos iš Ukrainos, Moldovos, Gruzijos bei Armėnijos aptarė energetikos reikalus ir bendras grėsmes Euronest parlamentinės asamblėjos 5-ojoje sesijoje.
A reduced annual session of the Eastern European Parliamentary Assembly took place in Brussels on the same day as multiple terror attacks brought carnage and tragedy to the capital.
And I would ask us all a minute of silence.
Euronest is a forum to promote greater partnership across areas ranging from foreign affairs, education and the economy. At this year's meeting, a resolution called on Russia to immediately release the Ukrainian pilot, Nadia Shevchenko, who was sentenced on Tuesday to 22 years in jail.
We do not recognize this so-called verdict as a legitimate one. This was a farce, and we will continue to demand the unconditional release of Nadia Savchenko from the prison.
Across the 2 days, members also had meetings with affiliated political groups.
I know what is the most important issue, your independence and Russia aggression, and I'm always ready to help.
Another issue for the MEP was strengthening Europe's energy security via partnership with eastern neighbours.
They are very important for us, not only because as energy sources in these countries, but also as energy roads to the European Union. We cannot develop our economy. We cannot be competitive without energy supply, security of energy supply, and affordable prices.
But due to the terror threat level in Brussels, the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly came to an abrupt end.
Ekonomikos audrai praūžus, sveikesnis požiūris į bankus. Europos centrinio banko priežiūros taryba ataskaitoje parlamentui teigia, kad perėjimo nuo seno pasaulio prie naujo metodai vis dar trapūs.
The general performance of banks directly supervised by the ECB has improved in 2015, largely thanks to stabilizing macroeconomic conditions and much-needed efforts to repair banks' balance sheet hit by the crisis. We are in a difficult transitory period. The adaptation between the old world of bailout and the new world of bailing the investors.
Has your organization, has the SSM, actually completed an assessment of the risks concerning Brexit.
I will neither try to predict the outcome of the referendum, not to try to quantify the impact of UK exit. But your question is different because it addresses the situation of banks that could join continental Europe. We will have more significant institutions in the euro area. I see also advantages to have more jobs created in continental Europe. But, well, again, I will not comment on hypothetical situations.
Didžiosios pasaulinės korporacijos ir mokesčių skaidrumas. Europos parlamento nariai klausinėja Apple ir Google atstovus apie jų mokesčius Europoje, siekdami padaryti galą mokesčių vengimui.
Are multinationals starting to feel the heat? At a meeting at the Parliament, MEPs of the Special Committee on Tax Rulings were primed and ready to take a bite out of Apple and Google.
When small and medium-sized enterprises have a tax burden that are 30% higher than multinational corporations, then there's something wrong in the system.
Across the EU, investigations are ongoing to get companies to cough up for unpaid taxes. Year on year, EU countries lose 1.1 trillion euros through corporate tax avoidance. But what multinationals do isn't illegal. They simply make use of national tax incentives.
Google and Apple tried to give a wrong impression about their tax behavior. They were quoting they are paying globally a fair share of tax, which is true because they pay taxes on the profits they book to the US. But Europe basically is left without a proper tax base, and about that fact they were not ready to speak openly.
The Parliament is ramping up the pressure on companies to disclose their earnings and the amount of tax paid in every EU country that they operate in. An anti-tax avoidance package is set to be rolled out in April. But any legislative changes to close tax loopholes ultimately lies in the hands of the very member states that multinationals made the deals with.
O dabar interviu. Ar žinote, kas tai yra privatumo skydas ir kodėl jis yra kritikuojamas kovos už duomenų apsaugą aktyvistų? Sužinokime iš pirmųjų lūpų.
Until October 2015, the so-called Safe Harbour Agreement was supposed to govern the privacy of EU citizens' data transferred to the US. But everything changed with him. Max Schrems wanted his data back from Facebook and successfully prompted the European Court of Justice to invalidate Safe Harbour.
Max Schrems, hello and welcome. You effectively, let's say, kill off Safe Harbour. So how would you describe today my data? Is my data safe?
What we see is different trends. A couple of companies are moving data back to Europe where it's not subject to US law, which obviously is typically the better choice. It really depends on the member state as well where it's at. There are cases where they implemented new limitations, for example, standard contractual clauses, which allow much less data usage in the commercial sector especially than Safe Harbour has done before. So there are some improvements. The problem is that we would need a replacement for all this. And the replacement that the Commission has proposed right now, called Privacy Shield, is basically Safe Harbour once again.
Privacy Shield is the word today. It is supposed to replace Safe Harbour, which doesn't exist in theory anymore. Where are the weak points? Because you said it didn't change anything, it's the same again. Are we taken for fool? Or?
Basically, yes. Unfortunately, that's the situation. We have two different main issues. The one side is government surveillance. Privacy Shield doesn't change anything on it. There is an ombudsman that you can address, but she's only going to tell you that everything is fine or not, but she's not going to tell you anything about your case. They're not even going to tell you if you were even subject to surveillance. The other issue is the commercial sector, so what, for example, Facebook or Google can do with the data internally. And there we have teeny tiny limitations, where as a lawyer you only need 2 lines in a privacy policy to override them anyways. So that's very interesting, as the court has requested essentially equivalent protection from the Privacy Shield. It doesn't give it in either one sector, not in mass surveillance, but also not in the private sector.
If we go back just to your years of fight against Facebook, of course Facebook it's not against Facebook, it's about the issue of data protection. How do you see the future now?
And in the long run, the big question is really in Europe, are we enforcing our right to privacy, or are we continuing to kind of put it and post it everywhere and say we're these great, privacy protectors, but in reality we're not doing anything about it, and that may change in 2 years when the data protection reform comes along. Mainly because we have no penalties. In Austria, the maximum penalty in my home country is 25,000 euros. So basically, if you ask a lawyer how to comply with the law, it's going to be much more expensive as a company than just breaking the law. And that's what we did for a long while, because privacy was more seen as like a consumer rights, it would be nice to have thing. But since the Lisbon Treaty, it's a fundamental right in the European Union, and we haven't really caught on to that so far.
But okay, you studied in the US. To change it on the other side, the US would have to change something. If they want to change something, they have to change the Patriot Act. The EU will never have enough pressure to make them change the Patriot Act.
That's a big question if you at least get certain limitations, because on the other hand, you got to see that the Silicon Valley is one of their biggest exports, basically. If they have the biggest market in the world, which is the European Union in the end, blocking them effectively because of all these surveillance laws, there would be a lot of pressure from the Silicon Valley in Washington saying, your surveillance laws are damaging our international business. And I think this would be the pressure point to use. Unfortunately, the Commission has basically given in before that.
Let's go back to Facebook. What should I do to have my data safe on Facebook?
It's a question where I don't have any answer to, because basically if you're not stupid online, which most people aren't, if they're not posting their naked pictures, you don't have a lot of possibilities to limit it. Basically, companies are trying to tell you you're in charge of it, but in fact you're not. Your friends are posting your data, colleagues of yours are uploading your phone number. You don't even have to be a member of Facebook that they have your data and have a profile on you. We call it shadow profile. So the idea of you as a person being able to change something substantially is, I think, wrong. I think we could possibly change something through legislation. The European Parliament has pushed a lot for the data protection reform, and I do see that this would actually be a substantial change. Really putting that on the individual user is something that I think is very unfair, because no one, not even tech experts that do that every day, really know what these devices do. How should the average guy on the street make this informed decision?
But one more time, is the word data protection even possible today?
I hate the word. It's about informational self-determination. It's about you being in charge, who knows something about you, who can use your information, and who is making money off your information. You should have all the choices. You could be as naked and not public as you want to be on the internet, but you got to make the choice. It's not someone else.
Max Schrems, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Tiek šiandien. Ačiū, kad buvote drauge. Europos naujienos laida, kurią rengiame drauge su Europos TV, jūsų lauks ir kitą savaitę. Tad iki naujų susitikimų.
Ratifier la Convention de Genève.
Économie.
La riforma giudiziaria.
Bonjour,
après la Européen de monitorizare.